Hello, healthy living people. This is Megan Noll, your instructor for the class. This is our first official lecture for this class, and we're going to cover some of the basics about what this class is about, what your learning outcomes are, and then some important things about how you can access health services on the MPC campus. So if you have access to this course, you should know you're in Health 4, the Introduction to Healthy Living. This is section 0300. My name is Megan Noll, and this is the Late Start Fall 2019 course. And your very first assignment for this class is actually to send me an email so that I know your first and last name, especially which ones you'd like me to address you as in emails and other conversations, any other correspondences we have. And tell me why you're taking this class. Maybe it could be you want to adopt one new healthy habit. It could be you want to get rid of a different unhealthy habit, or you just need more basic information, or maybe it's just a requirement. That's all fine. Do tell me one healthy habit you currently have in your life and one you would like to add to your life. Now, you're probably doing better than you think you are. I just always want to start out like that. We tend to be very negative when we critique ourselves as human beings, and so don't come into this course thinking all of a sudden you're everything about what you're doing is wrong and I'm here to judge you, because that's not what's going to happen at all. I'm here to help you make smart choices about your life, okay? I'm here to help guide you into these choices. I'm not going to tell you if what you're doing is right or wrong unless I think you are actively harming yourself, in which case, as a mandatory reporter, I do need to make sure you get the help you need, okay? So let's keep going from there. We'll get into that more. It helps me to know as an online instructor what kinds of things would help you to be successful in this course. So also tell me what you expect or hope from a good instructor. And last but definitely not least, tell me if you have access to the book's online system. Now remember, when you check the syllabus in the previous video, I guess, or module on Canvas, we talked about how the assignments for this class are due by the following Monday at midnight, except the very last the very last week, where they're due by Friday at midnight. Let me backtrack a little bit. So the assignments for this class are due the following Monday by 8 a.m., except for the last week of the course, where they're due Friday by midnight, because that's when the course officially ends. Okay, so this first assignment, please email me by 8 a.m. on Monday, the following Monday, which I believe, let's find out what date that is, just to be sure. It is the 21st. Okay, so make sure to send me your email by the October 21st by 8 a.m. Okay, that'll get you your first 5 points for the class. Fantastic, easy peasy. Okay, so let me reiterate again that you can always contact me by email. I tend to respond within the hour unless I'm in a big block of teaching. Do remember, I don't have official office hours at Monterey Bay because I am actually in LA. So I used to be, I taught in person on the MPC campus for a while. I taught anatomy and some biology classes, and then I started teaching this health course as well. But now I'm living in LA because that's where my day job is. So I teach high school science as well as college sciences. So it does make it hard to have office hours on campus. So send me an email if you need me. Okay, so why does this course exist? What is the point of this course? This is definitely one of the accredited courses at our accredited school. So what are we here for? There's two big goals, two big learning outcomes. You're going to evaluate your own wellness and describe the choices you need to make to maintain a good health. In general, you're going to see health and wellness are actually very complicated systems. Health is no longer defined, and wellness is no longer defined as just the absence of being ill. Okay, so there's actually a lot more that it takes for you to be a healthy, thriving human being. You are not just expected to survive. Well, not just expected. You're hopefully surviving, but you also, to have a full life, you should be thriving as well. And we're going to talk about what that means, depending on many, many different things in this class. You are also going to, if this is some funky editing, you're going to describe how different factors can influence your personal wellness, okay? And this gets complicated. Some of these things you might shy away from at first, but that's important to know. So let's talk a little bit about it. So it's really important that in this class you're honest with yourself, because you're not going to be helping anyone if you just say, I don't want to talk about any of the things that are wrong with me. I don't want to talk about my own wellness. I just want to pass the class. Now, this is, a lot of students have to take this class as a requirement, and so that's their only reason for taking it. But I do hope that you'll get something out of this class that will help you individually and personally, because that is the point of the class. So don't ever be afraid to ask questions. I will never judge you for the questions you're asking, but and be interdependent. Talk to each other. So you may say, oh, in class today, get email addresses from other people in the class. I think you could do that through Canvas or send out some sort of a message saying, hey, who's in this class right now? Let's talk about this thing that we learned in class. What do you think about this? Is it insane? Does it make sense? Are we glad that this is being covered in a wellness course now? But do remember, you are responsible for your own success in this class, and this means you really, as this is an online course, need to be up to just be very good about taking notes on when things are due, plan your week accordingly so that you don't have to rush to get it all done before the end of the week. At the beginning of each week, I'll try and tell you how many things there are for that week. So in a second, we'll look and see what you have to do for this week to make sure you're up to it. Okay, so the big ideas in vocabulary, let's talk about the difference between health and wellness. We'll talk about national vital statistics, health disparities, behavior change. This is a big deal. We'll talk a little bit about this, and some things such as risk factors and chronic diseases. So wellness. Wellness is a new goal. You hear people talking about mindfulness and wellness in these kind of like, fluffy, let's all be friends and hold hands kind of way. But it turns out there might actually be some goodness behind that. So we're going to talk about the science behind a lot of this. We're starting to figure out that health and wellness are very complicated aspects of human biology that maybe in the 50s we would not pay attention to. So we're going to talk a lot about something called stress. And you may know the word but not know what it really means. I did a lot of research in stress when I was in school and working on my master's. And so I like to say it's my favorite topic that I love to hate, because it's fascinating how we can think ourselves to death as humans. No other animal can do that. So, or organism that we know of. And so it's a complicated subject. We'll talk a lot about it. So health is your overall condition of your body or your mind. So I started talking about the 50s because we didn't used to think about this, the mind being a part of being healthy. Okay, so we now know mental health is a very important factor, and people around the world are finally starting to take notice and say, oh, maybe we need to make sure that we take care of the human as a whole, the person as a whole, and not just, well, they look pretty healthy, so I guess they're fine. Okay, someone can look healthy but have a very unhealthy mental state, and that is something everyone should be paying as much attention to as if they have an unhealthy body state. We'll talk about that. Wellness, on the other hand, is optimal health and vitality. So this is, do you make conscious decisions that affect risk factors that contribute to disease or injury? So you could be a very healthy person, but you make bad choices. We all have that one friend from high school or college or in our lives, or maybe we are this person who you just don't know why they make the decisions they make. And part of it might not be in their control. It could be part of their brain, something's happening in their brain with the prefrontal cortex. We'll get to it. It could be something about their childhood. You don't know. It's not for us to judge. It's for us to start to learn how to make healthy and wellness guided decisions. Okay, so here's the thing. Wellness is very complicated. We're going to go into all of these different things in a lot of detail. This is a class where a lot of people say, well, how come I never learned how to do taxes in high school? Well, that is part of your financial wellness, and we'll talk a little bit about that. I'm not going to tell you how to fill out a tax form, but I will tell you how to find people to help you with that. Okay. Let's go on. This is kind of a complicated figure that used to be in the book. I don't think it is anymore. And it talks about, there are 9 dimensions of wellness that are mentioned here, and you have to have them all working together in order to be a well human being. And it's not something you can just fix one day and then you're fixed forever, because That's just not how we work. Our environments are always changing, and the conditions around you are always changing. Your stress levels are always changing, etc. So you have to keep these things. And actually, if you don't change, that's actually kind of bad for you. That's bad for our brains. We'll talk about Alzheimer's and dementia later. So it's a good thing to be conscious of changes that are happening to and around you, and be cognizant that there are things you should be paying attention to that will affect your health and your wellness. Because again, complicated. Now, I'm not going to read this whole thing to you. Please take some time to look over what each one of these 9 aspects of wellness, what are the qualities and behaviors in each one. So physical wellness is what we usually tend to think of when we say that person's healthy or I'm healthy. I know when I'm sick. It's fall, it's getting colder. A lot of people might be getting colds, especially if they're new to campus, and so you're in a new environment, you're exposed to different germs. Maybe you're not eating right, maybe you're not exercising well. So that all falls under physical wellness. But there's so many other parts. So we're starting to get more into this emotional wellness. Like, do you have self-confidence? Do you have self-acceptance, etc.? Can you share your feelings? Now, this is something that, again, doctors in the 50s were like, oh, God, don't even, feelings are gross. Ugh. But now we're realizing, actually, we evolved to be able to share our feelings with each other. And so we have to keep that in mind when we're taking care of ourselves. Okay, there's intellectual wellness. Are you open to new ideas, et cetera, et cetera? These things are, it's looking more and more like these things are very important factors in avoiding Alzheimer's. We'll get to that later. Interpersonal wellness, there is a growing trend in the world that people are reporting that they're lonely in a world where the internet makes it makes it so easy for us to connect. People are not connecting as much, and they report being lonely, and it turns out that's not so good for us wellness-wise. We'll talk a lot about that. Cultural wellness, this is how do you maintain and value your own cultural identity. This could also be an ecological identity. How do you respond to the environment and climate change issues? But it also is how do you deal with people who maybe don't respect your cultural your cultural identity. How do you deal with new people who you've never encountered before? Okay, so there are we tend to get people who stereotype a lot, they tend to not be as well. Interesting. So spiritual wellness, as a scientist, my first thought when I saw this was, spiritual wellness, what is this? But it turns out humans need this. Humans need to have a capacity for love and compassion and forgiveness. So spiritual wellness could be something about religion, but it doesn't have to be about religion. So it turns out humans are, they feel best when they have a sense of meaning and purpose. You tend to see people start to head towards suicidal tendencies when they lose their sense of purpose. So that's terrifying. We'll talk a lot about that. Environmental wellness, this is getting to be more and more of a problem with climate change issues. We'll talk a lot about this, especially on the coast. We worry about microplastics, et cetera, et cetera. In California, we worry a lot about wildfires. In LA right now, there is, it feels like fall. There's a nice smell in the air that smells like burning wood, and then you realize, oh, it's not someone's fireplace, it's a wildfire, and what I'm smelling is actually poor air quality. And so as California residents, we have to worry about air quality a lot because we get a lot of wildfires. So we'll talk about that. Financial wellness has to do with, because of the society we live in, how well can you take care of yourself, or do you have access to means to help you take care of yourself and live within your means, avoid debt, etc. And then finally, we'll talk about occupational wellness. If you don't love what you do, that's a stressor, and that's not great for you. And it may be, maybe you can't avoid it. Maybe you have to work the job you have. You have to take the classes you have, but so maybe you can't avoid that occupational distress, but there are other ways to balance out that stress so that you get rid of that, just that bad stressor there. Let's look at, the leading causes of death as reported in 2016. So this is the most updated one our book has, and that's fine, even though it's 2019. You'll see the very top of the list is heart disease, okay? And this is for all humans in the United States, all people in the United States that are reporting, which can be complicated with insurance issues that we'll get to. So you'll see the top things. We have heart disease, we have cancers, we have chronic lower respiratory diseases, strokes, Alzheimer's, diabetes, influenza. None of these things are things that other animals die of. And so you might be saying, why do you keep talking about humans as animals? We are animals. We evolved on the same planet as, we may do different things when we have iPhones. Maybe our, dogs and cats can't figure out how to text us, but we still evolved under the same conditions as all the rest of these animals. And yet none of these things are going to cause a zebra to die. Okay. So there's a really good book called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers by Robert Sapolsky, that I highly recommend. And he talks about how, if a zebra starts to like do the things that we do, and think about like, oh, I have bills due and I have all these things happening and I have our paper and start to get stressed, well, suddenly it's not going to get to the point of developing heart disease because it's going to get eaten by a lion. Well, we don't get eaten by lions anymore. So once that's taken away and most of our needs are already met, we suddenly can think ourselves to death with stress. And all of these things are influenced by stress. They also, you'll see that things like smoking, inactive lifestyle, which is do you exercise, diet, obesity, alcohol, a lot of these things are influenced by that. The only things that are not are something like Parkinson's, which is purely genetic. Okay. So one thing that's interesting with this list is that it's an average for all the people in the U.S. But if you look at these, the top 5, the heart disease, let's lump all the cancers together, chronic lower respiratory diseases like bronchitis and emphysema, accidents and strokes. In fact, is accidents even on the list anymore? It may not be. Another thing you don't see on this list is homicide. So homicide dropped off the list of top causes of death in the United States in 2015, which, people like to talk about crime statistics. They're so scary. Oh, true crime makes me scared. I can't leave my house anymore because there's murderers everywhere. Well, actually, it's not as prevalent as it used to be. Okay, so what is more prevalent is, well, again, stress. Okay, so let's keep going. So the thing is, though, these are the top 5 leading causes of death for all the people in the United States. But if you look at the age breakdown, if you look at Americans between 15 and 24, which is kind of the stereotypical college age, though you may not be in this age bracket, so don't worry. If you look at the statistics for students between 15 and 24, Americans between 15 and 24, you see a very different display. Okay, so what happens first? The leading cause of death in people under 25 are accidents. Okay, or unintentional injuries. Okay, a lot of these can be influenced by alcohol, can be influenced by drugs, can be influenced just by life decisions, and we'll get into that a lot. But look at this. Number 2 is suicide, and that's terrifying. And number 3 is homicide. So in younger individuals, all of a sudden we have suicide and homicide becoming major causes of death. And a lot of this has to do with stress, and we'll get into that. Okay. Interestingly, in 2015, the average life expectancy dropped for the first time since 1993. In 1993, suddenly between 1993 and 2014, life expectancy kept going up and up and up, and then in 2015, it started going down. So for males in general, it was about 76 years, and for females, it's about 81. It went down just a few months for each person on average, but that's still very strange since it's not because of homicide, it's because of stress factors. Interesting. There is also a huge, actually the gap between males and females has actually decreased. It used to be that males tended to die much younger than females in general, but that gap is closing. So hooray for that gender equality, I guess. So the problem is that women have started smoking more, okay? And so that has caused more lung cancer, so women aren't living as longer. And men are starting to really realize, oh, maybe I should take care of myself so that I don't get heart disease, okay? And so that is becoming, people are becoming more aware of the dangers of heart disease and also the signs for it in men. And when we get into this lecture, you're going to see there's a big difference in the signs of heart disease in men versus women, which is something you should be very, very aware of. We also are going to remember we talked about how there's some things that might get uncomfortable, but they're very important. There are differences within races between, that cause differences in death rates, okay? So for the black population, the African-American population, life expectancy in 2015 was 75 years. The white population is 78 years. Oh, interesting. Okay, read what you want to into that. And actually, this may not even, this is in 2015 and we're in 2019 now. This could be an even bigger gap due to many political issues, many local governmental issues, police issues, etc., etc. We're not going to get into it. Just know that there are differences in life expectancies. And is this fair? It's not fair. Okay, the Hispanic population, though, is about 82 years. So that's interesting. What's happening there? There are some things that could be happening that are different, but we won't really get into it right now. Read into that what you will. If you look at the 2015 life expectancy for males, and then you break it down by race and females, we see a huge gap between the longest living, the Hispanic females, having a life expectancy of 84 years, and the shortest living, the Black male, of only 72 years. That's an 11, almost a 12-year gap. What is happening? Clearly, there is something very significant happening here that is something to be aware of as an individual when you're looking at your own wellness. How can you protect yourself in a society that maybe, guys, it's so complicated. But it's good for everyone to be aware of all of these big differences, because the data doesn't lie. You can't look at this and say, oh, but it must be politics. No, there's no politics here. I mean, except for maybe in the causes. It's just data. Okay. All right. Let's look at this thing called the Healthy People Initiative. Okay, this was a national initiative. It's the Health Promotion and Disease Prevention, and it had 4 big goals. So if you go to healthypeople.gov, hopefully it's still up, and you see these 4 big goals that the government put into place, I believe in 2013, maybe. And the idea was you want to see, the big goals are to attain high quality, longer lives, free of preventable disease. So all of the things I've mentioned, almost all of them are preventable diseases, preventable disability, injury, and premature death. There should be ways that we can get around this. There shouldn't be those huge gaps. And everyone has the right to live and to thrive. Another goal is to eliminate the disparities and achieve health equality among all the groups, and create social and physical environments that promote good health for all, promote quality of life, healthy development, and healthy behaviors across all life stages. This means neonatal, which is newborns, this means kids and toddlers. Teenagers need different, their wellness aspects are very, very different than someone who has a fully developed prefrontal cortex, or the very last part of your brain to develop. It doesn't finish growing until you're about 25. So if you're 16, 17, that's a very different set of wellness issues that somebody who's 25 is no longer dealing with. Okay, so the Healthy People Initiative says that everyone deserves to be healthy and to thrive. Okay, so what is a health disparity? This is a particular type of health difference that is closely linked with social, economic, and/or environmental disadvantage. Okay, so we see that there are groups that are experiencing greater obstacles to health based on their racial or ethnic group, like we just said. Religion, some religions, it's interesting to think about religions or just ideologies in general now that we're looking at things like the anti-vaxxer movement. That is an ideology that says, this one celebrity said a thing, we decided to believe her and forget all the science. Not good. Okay, moving on. There are some religions, however, that are very, very pro-medicine, and so they're going to be, they don't have as much of a disparity. Socioeconomic status, so your income and your education. These shouldn't be things that affect if you're having a heart attack, you shouldn't worry, oh, but I can't afford to go to the hospital. In the U.S., we spend the most money per capita or per person on health compared to any other country in the world, and yet we don't have free health care. Interesting. Again, not getting political, just throwing the data out there. So your gender or sexual orientation or gender identity can also very much affect your wellness and the health disparities you may see. So a lot of times there is a systemic idea that when a woman or a girl goes into the doctor and says, oh, I'm not feeling well, it's automatically written off as a menstrual issue. And, oh, you'll be fine. Just wait a few days. It's fine. And maybe very often it is, but sometimes it's not. Or sometimes it's hard for people to tell What kind of pain am I in? Am I in too much pain? Is this a normal amount of pain? It's very subjective, and so it's hard to tell that kind of thing. Another problem is that people don't, we're starting to understand more and more that the signs of heart disease in women is very different than what it looks like in men. And even the way women are raised as girls, you see in many different societies that girls are told to just be quiet. Don't tell anyone if you're hurt or if you're uncomfortable. That's just life. Deal with it. While boys are kind of, if anything goes wrong, they're allowed to make a big fuss about it. And so you see this depending on what kind of background you grew up with. You see this difference in how gender affects your health disparities. Another thing is sexual orientation or gender identity. So if you are someone who is not heteronormative, which means you're not a straight, quote unquote normal, male female partnership, or sexuality, or sexual attraction, for some reason that will then affect your health care. Is that fair? It's not fair. Everyone deserves equal health care and access to wellness. And gender identity, we'll get into this a lot more later, but gender identity, we're realizing, is very complicated. If you're someone whose brain and body match in sexuality, then congratulations, you're doing great. But that doesn't mean if they don't match, you're not doing great. It just means that some little protein got weird when you were being, cooked up in the womb, and there's ways that we can fix it now, and you shouldn't have to there should be no disparity based just on something as silly as that, and not that to be trans is silly, but the fact that people might discriminate against someone who is trans, that is ridiculous. No one should worry about what's in someone else's pants unless they are directly participating. That's all I'm gonna say. Moving on. Age, we see a big difference in health disparity with age, where people who are aging, sometimes they go in to get health care and they're kind of dismissed as, that's just normal aging. Yeah, you're supposed to be in pain. That's just your body breaking down. Well, that's ridiculous. You still deserve good health care as you get older. This is becoming more and more of an important thing. Mental health or cognitive, sensory, or physical disabilities. These things these are ways that people can experience health disparities compared to other individuals. We'll talk a lot about that. And geographical location. Is it fair that someone who lives out in the country or maybe in certain parts of Salinas receive a different level of health care versus someone who lives in San Francisco or downtown LA? There's more people in the very, very populated areas, which means there's probably more doctors, but that doesn't mean that the people who live out in more rural areas don't deserve the same level of care. Okay, so how have we gotten? So I think I said 2013. This was implemented in 2008. And 8 years later, the Department of Health went back and looked at progress. And there's been a lot of progress with people getting health care. Okay, and this was the American Care Act. Some people call that Obamacare because it was implemented by the Obama administration. But it's actually the ACA, or the American Care Act, I believe is what it's called. So you see, it's not 100% yet, but this has increased. The trying to get rid of people with high blood, or decrease in percent of adults with hypertension, has not changed significantly at all. Oh, that's not great. Reducing the proportion of obese adults actually went the opposite way. It has gotten worse since 2008. Interesting. We haven't seen any change in the proportion of adults who drink excessively in 30 days. Though there is some good news. The proportion of adults who meet federal guidelines for exercise has gone up significantly, more than actually they were even expecting. So that's good. And there's been significant progress of people reducing their use of cigarettes. Now, I don't know if this actually brings vaping into account at all. We'll talk about that more later. But it is good to know that people are smoking a lot less. And I've talked to students, high school students, and they just say, yeah, no, smoking is just not cool. And I remember when I was in high school, it was so cool, dude. Oh, my God. You wanted to hang out with the smokers. They were the cool kids. But now it's not cool because people know a lot more about it, and they're like, why? That's gross. If you're a smoker, we can talk about ways. There are programs to help you quit smoking that are becoming much more effective than they were earlier. Sorry. Okay, so what affects wellness? Your health habits, your heredity, and your family history. We'll talk a lot about that. your environment, your access. But the good news is you have access to healthcare as an MPC student. So let's talk about that. Well, we will in a second. So what do you have control over if you're trying to influence your wellness? It's very hard to have control over something like your environment if you can't leave the environment. So some people say, oh, if you're in a bad area, just go somewhere else. Well, that's not possible. That's an example of privilege where someone is saying, yeah, of course I have the means to get up and move and go somewhere else where I have a better environment. I can go live by the ocean. Not everyone can do that. And if everyone went and lived by the ocean, then it wouldn't work for many, many reasons. So that can be hard to control. It's also, you can't control your heredity or your family history. You just can't, okay? But you can look it up, hopefully, maybe, sometimes. There's some privilege there that you may or may not be able to look into your family history to see cases of breast cancer, cases of hypertension, etc. Fortunately, you have access to healthcare as an MPC student. You pay for it as part of your tuition. And the thing you have almost complete control over are many, many of your health habits. And we'll talk a lot about that. So healthy behaviors make a huge difference, okay? And this class is going to help you increase those healthy behaviors. You may be able to do little things you didn't even think of before. So let's talk about at MPC, at Monterey Peninsula College. What do you have? You have free over-the-counter medicine, okay? So the over-the-counter medicines, anything you could just go buy from CVS with that, or any kind of pharmacy without having to go talk to a pharmacist, like aspirin, etc. You can go and talk to, at least at the time of this writing, that was true. Hopefully it's still true. You get free mental health therapy. I highly suggest you take advantage of this so that you can help guide yourself for when you're not at MPC. What will you need to do afterwards? It's becoming much more destigmatized to talk to a therapist. In fact, I have students who make fun of people who don't have therapists. And I've heard comedians say, if you don't have a therapist, we're never going to date, etc., etc. It's just, these people are trained to help you think about how you deal with your life in a healthy way. Okay. And it's not going to, they're not there to judge you. They're there to help you make good decisions. And there's so much more. Okay. The services are free of charge. You pay the fee when you pay your registration. You can drop in at any time. For counseling, you have to make an appointment. And for some of the health risk things, medication reviews, screening tests. But if you just feel gross and you need to just go see if something's wrong with you, you can drop in and they usually can see you pretty quickly. There are psychological services like we talked about, and vaccines. We're going to talk so much about vaccines, you guys. At any chance you can, get a healthy vaccine. If you haven't yet, get your flu vaccine. We'll talk about it. Okay. There's also tuberculosis tests by appointment. We'll talk about why tuberculosis it's still such a big deal to make sure you don't get tuberculosis. People still die of tuberculosis, even though you can prevent it with a vaccine. Oh, yeah, and many jobs actually you can't even get certain jobs if you test positive for tuberculosis. So get those vaccines when you can. Okay, so we're going to go and look at the website. All right, so how do you find the MPC Health website? So I literally, when I was looking for it, I just went up into the search bar at the MPC and I put in health, and the very first thing that pops up is student health services. Let's make this so you can actually read it. All right, cool. So what do you have? If you go to this website, it's going to tell you so many things. It's going to tell you where to go. It's going to tell you your patient bill of rights. What are you allowed? What's the doctor on campus? What kind of counseling they have, etc. So many things. There's general health information and resources. They'll tell you, guys, sexually transmitted diseases are rampant on college campuses and in old folks' homes. We'll talk about that. It's very interesting. I will tell you, I know a lot of people, I've known lots of people, including people in my family, who worry that when they go to the doctor, they're going to be judged and seen as less of a person because they did something bad. And that's silly. The entire point of the doctors being there is so that they can take care of you. So there is no shame in going to a doctor for any of these things, okay? So many of these things can be treated so easily. There are so many STDs. You just go, and if for some reason you have an STD, you take an antibiotic. If you take the right antibiotic at the right time, boom, you're done. You're better, okay? There are so many things. They even also have sexual assault prevention. We can talk about how that is a bit so okay. We'll talk about sexual assault later, but if you want to get in touch with me about that personally, please feel free. I'm a big big proponent of protecting yourself, but also not blaming victims. So let's talk about that. What else? Yeah, so there's so many things. If you can just start going through the health services website to see what you have access to. So many people don't take advantage of the services that you're literally already paying for as a student. This is the time in your life when you should be taking advantage so much. You can get pregnancy tests, you can get condoms, you can get medicines. Oh, look, it is still free. You can get, you can monitor your vital signs, your blood pressure. Oh, so many things, guys. Do this now while you have access to it. You can get masks, which are good for when we have wildfires. I'll protect you from lung damage. Okay, so, and you can get physicals. You can get mental health counseling. Again, take advantage of this while you have the chance. You're already paying for it. You might as well. All right, let's finish this up. Okay. Do keep in mind, you should contact them immediately, the health services. If you're injured on campus, you can just call from anywhere on campus. They'll come and handle any first aid, injury, or illness assessments. They'll talk to you about medical referrals, incident reporting, and insurance claims. So if you're on the MPC campus, there are certain things that MPC's insurance will cover. So if, for example, if you're walking down the sidewalk and a tree branch falls on you, if you need to talk to the people on campus immediately, and they can get that taken care of. They will take care of your medical issues because that is something that happened on campus. Okay, so anytime you can, talk to health services. Also, if you have some sort of limiting condition or health problem, health services wants to know about students with these health needs, because that helps them become a more inclusive campus. Okay, if they learn that somewhere on campus somebody with a physical disability doesn't have access as all the other students do, they need to fix it. So that is their prerogative. It's not their prerogative, it's their responsibility to make sure everyone has equal access on campus no matter what. So do make sure you contact for these sorts of things. That's where we're going to stop this lecture today. Tomorrow, or actually later today, we'll go into a little bit more in chapter 1 in more specifics. Sorry, that's my dog. He says it's time to go also. Thank you for listening to this lecture, and we'll talk more soon. Bye.